The first steel post hit the ground at 8:17 on a crisp September morning, the kind where the lake mist still clings to the cattails and the loons are calling each other across the water like they know something big is coming. The hydraulic driver on the skid steer let out one sharp, metallic cough, and the post punched straight through the root ball of Linda Harrington's Queen Elizabeth rose that had taken Best in Show at the County Garden Club for 6 years running. Petals burst into the air like someone had set off a grenade in a florist shop. Red snow. Linda came out the French doors of her $18 million fortress like a missile wearing a peach silk robe. The belt was flapping loose, her hair still in the silk bonnet she slept in, slippers sinking into the dew-wet zoysia grass. She screamed something that started as words and ended as pure animal noise. Richard, her husband, stumbled out behind her in navy pajama bottoms and bare feet, trying to grab her elbow. Linda, honey, they've got cameras, they're live streaming this. She shook him off like a dog coming out of the water and charged the temporary orange safety fence the crew had strung the night before. One manicured hand hooked the chain link. A $200 gel nail snapped clean off, and she started climbing like a woman possessed. I just leaned against my new cedar no trespassing sign, still smelling of fresh stain, and sipped my coffee. Black, no sugar, same as every morning for 35 years. The sun was coming up behind me, turning the lake into hammered gold, and I remember thinking this was the prettiest sunrise I'd ever paid for. My name is Jack Brennan. 54 years old, 3 blown discs in my lower back, hands that look like topographical maps from decades of turning wrenches on heavy equipment. My wife Ruth and I spent 15 years eating macaroni with the cheese packet that came in the box, driving a '98 Chevy with more Bondo than original metal, and telling our friends, maybe next year, every time they posted beach pictures from Florida or Mexico. Also, we could buy 1.2 acres on Crystal Lake in Antrim County, Michigan, with 200 feet of sugar sand shoreline and a little cedar cabin that smelled like mouse nests and old dreams. That shoreline was supposed to be Ruth's salvation. Lupus had been eating her alive since she was 39, the kind that turns your joints into broken glass and your skin into paper. The rheumatologist in Traverse City told us cool water therapy was the only thing that might keep her walking without a cane, maybe even without a wheelchair. So we saved. And saved. And then the estate that owned the parcel finally sold it to us for every dime we had, and a second mortgage on a truck that was already on its 3rd transmission. We thought the hard part was over. Then we met Linda and Richard Harrington. Their house looks like a modern art museum that lost a fight with a cruise ship. All cantilevered glass and rusted steel, jutting out over the lake like it's giving nature the finger. Linda inherited railroad money older than the state itself. Richard runs the county planning and zoning department, which around here is basically being the king of a very small, very expensive kingdom. For 12 straight years, while our lot sat empty waiting for probate, Linda treated our shoreline like her private resort. Her teak dock. Her 4-post boat lift big enough for a cabin cruiser. Her underwater LED light show that turned the bay purple and green at night and confused the walleye so bad the DNR had to stock extra fingerlings every spring. She threw parties where the catering tents went up on our sand and the valet parked Range Rovers on our grass. The first Saturday we owned the place, I was out on my knees replacing rotten deck boards when the click 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 of Italian leather soles announced company. Linda came down the dock like she was walking the runway at Fashion Week. White linen pants, gold sandals, sunglasses the size of dinner plates, diamonds flashing in the sun like warning lights. She had a manila folder in one hand and a smile sharp enough to shave with. "Morning," she said, sweet as saccharin. "Just wanted to welcome you and go over the established recreational easement." She opened the folder and showed me documents on county letterhead that granted perpetual public access across our shoreline. I read them twice. The seals looked real. The signatures looked real. The whole thing was a masterpiece of forgery that must have cost somebody $5,000 and a bottle of top-shelf bourbon. I told her, as politely as a man can while kneeling in sawdust, that this was private property now and the dock was staying. Her smile never moved, but something behind the eyes went dead. "We'll see," she said, and the heels clicked back up the planks. 23 minutes later, Sheriff Donnelly rolled up in his Tahoe. Richard and the sheriff play in the same Tuesday scramble at the country club. Linda was already on the lawn in tears that would have won her an Oscar, claiming I'd threatened to burn her dock down with her on it. The sheriff gave me the slow headshake that passes for law enforcement around here when money is involved. "Jack, why don't we all just be neighborly about this?" Neighborly. That word became a punchline in our house. Within 30 days we were drowning in code violations. My mailbox was suddenly 2 inches too low. The fire ring I built for Ruth's evening therapy sessions, 3 flat stones and some sand, was declared an illegal open burn. The dock I was repairing needed a full Army Corps of Engineers wetland delineation that cost $12,000 and took 9 months. Meanwhile, Linda added a second story to her boathouse and got the permit in 11 days. She told the lake we were those people who would turn Crystal Lake into a trailer park. She smiled while she said it, teeth bright white against her summer tan, holding a glass of rose that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. The 4th of July was the night I stopped asking nice. Ruth was in the water doing her slow, painful laps while the sun bled out across the lake. I was sitting on the end of the dock timing her rests when the first bass note hit, deep enough to rattle my breastbone. I looked up and there were catering vans, white tablecloths, a string quartet, and maybe 60 people in navy blazers and Lily Pulitzer dresses drinking champagne on our beach. A full raw bar had been set up where Ruth's beach chair usually sat. I walked over and asked, real quiet, if they could move the party 20 feet south onto the Harrington beach that went on for half a mile. Linda raised her glass to the crowd and said, loud enough for every microphone in 100 yards, ladies and gentlemen, meet our new neighbor. The one I warned you about. Clearly unstable. Probably dangerous. The laughter that followed tasted like rust in my mouth. That night, I sat on our little porch with Ruth wrapped in a blanket, even though it was 80 degrees, watching Linda's illegal underwater lights turn the bay into a disco for rich people. Ruth put her hand on my arm and said, Jack, I'm tired of being afraid in my own home. I promised her the fear was about to change addresses. It turned out Linda's castle was built on sand in more ways than one. Her dock stuck 15 feet into public water without a single permit. Her boat lift sat in protected spawning beds. Those purple underwater lights? Banned since 2011. And when I paid a retired surveyor named Tom McAllister, a man who doesn't like being told what the lines are supposed to be, to shoot the real boundary, the new pin showed that Linda's outdoor kitchen, half her infinity pool deck, and the rose garden that supplied the country club flower show every August were all sitting on land deeded to Jack and Ruth Brennan. But the real gift from God came wrapped in yellow survey tape. The old Camp Birchwood parcel, 42 acres of virgin pine and the only deep water channel into the main lake, hit the market in August. Linda, through a shell company named Lakeshore Preservation LLC, was trying to buy it cash to choke off our access and force us to sell for pennies. She was so sure of herself, she'd already ordered the custom gate that would say Harrington Estates in gold script. What she didn't count on was the 1967 right of first refusal clause buried in every original lake deed. I exercised it and closed on the entire parcel for exactly $1 more than her sealed bid. The look on the title agent's face when I slid the cashier's check across the table was worth every sleepless night of the last decade. And then we found the access easement. Back in 1967, the camp needed a service road. The only practical route cut right through what is now the heart of Linda's backyard, past the outdoor kitchen, under the pergola, straight through the rose garden, and out to the lake. For 58 years, her landscaping had buried a recorded 20-foot right-of-way under Italian tile and imported boxwood. I now own a legal road straight through her paradise. The fence went up the following Monday. 6-foot cedar, tight board privacy, posts set exactly 1 inch inside my line, county permit laminated and zip-tied to the first panel. It cut her manicured kingdom clean in half and blocked her view of the sunrise she used to brag about on Instagram. Linda's meltdown was biblical. She tried private eyes, found nothing but 30 years of clean living. She wore a neck brace for 3 weeks and claimed emotional distress. She told the lake I had PTSD and kept an arsenal in the cabin. She scattered beer cans and cigarette butts along my fence line the night before inspections. She screamed racial slurs at my crew when they refused to take her bribe to accidentally put the posts on her side. Every tantrum went straight to the cloud on brand new 4K cameras with audio. And then we found the septic. Those prize roses weren't just fed with imported Dutch fertilizer. They were drinking from an illegal drain field that had been leaching onto our property for 12 years. The soil test came back hot enough to make the health department guys turn green. $50,000 fine, mandatory relocation, and criminal charges if they could prove intent. That's when the emails surfaced. Richard had been running a cash for permits racket that would make a Chicago ward boss blush. Bank records, county server backups, even text messages. Make the Brennan dock permits disappear until Linda owns the camp. They'd stolen $75,000 in federal shoreline restoration grants to pay for the dock lights that were killing the fishery. This wasn't a neighbor dispute anymore. This was RICO. We built a coalition the way you build a barn in the old days. Neighbors who'd been bullied into silence, real environmentalists with 10 years of water samples, a reporter from the Traverse City paper who smelled Pulitzer, and eventually the FBI white-collar squad that had been watching Richard for 18 months. We scheduled the first annual Crystal Lake Community Stewardship Festival for the same Saturday as Linda's Black Tie, Save Our Lake Gala. Free admission, free hot dogs, adaptive swimming dock for disabled kids, real scientists giving real talks about clean water. Linda lost what was left of her mind. Tuesday at 3 a.m. She snuck out in a black Lululemon tracksuit and dumped 5 gallons of restricted algaseed into the bay in front of our festival site. My motion lights caught her face clear as day, eyes wild, mouth set in a snarl, while fish started floating belly up by sunrise. Thursday night, she paid 2 local knuckleheads $500 each to smash our dock lights and spray paint threats. My cameras got faces, plates, and tattoos sharp enough for the state police to pick them up before breakfast. Friday, she tried to have me involuntarily committed for PTSD. The county shrink took one look at my actual VA records, clean psych evals, commendations for staying cool under fire in Desert Storm, and laughed her out of the office. Saturday, she handed a county supervisor a briefcase with $50,000 in cash to shut down our festival for environmental concerns. The supervisor was wearing a wire for the FBI. That night, the dueling parties lit up both shores like a war between heaven and hell. Linda's gala had ice sculptures, a 12-piece band, and politicians kissing her ring. Our festival had kids catching bluegill off the dock, veterans doing therapy swims, and a bounce house that cost less than one of Linda's centerpieces. At 9:42 p.m., the FBI rolled in. Unmarked Tahoes, windbreakers, the whole show. They put Richard in cuffs while the string quartet played Moon River. Linda grabbed the microphone and screamed about jackbooted thugs and deep state persecution of conservative patriots. I walked across the property line I'd fought a year to prove was mine and laid the evidence on the dessert table: lab reports, bank records, her own emails printed in 12-point font. She charged me in front of 200 witnesses and every news camera in northern Michigan, swinging a champagne flute like a tomahawk, shrieking that this was her lake, her community, her life. Local deputies tackled her in the hydrangeas. The feds kept carrying boxes out of her house until the wee hours. 18 months later, Linda stood in federal court in Grand Rapids and pled guilty to environmental felonies, conspiracy to commit honest services fraud, and civil rights violations under color of law. The judge gave her 18 months in Alderson, 3 years supervised release, and a permanent order barring her from owning property within 10 miles of any Great Lake. Richard drew 36 months and now wears a blue vest greeting customers at the Home Depot in Kalkaska. Their house sold at sheriff's auction for less than they owed. The new owners tore out the glass walls and put in normal windows that actually open. We turned the old camp into Ruth's Landing, wheelchair ramps straight into the water, a therapy pool heated by solar, a teaching pier where kids who've never held a fishing rod learn to cast, and a research buoy that proved within 24 months that removing one entitled polluter can bring an ecosystem roaring back to life. Ruth teaches adaptive swimming every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. She moves through the water like the disease never touched her. Some mornings I catch her laughing with the kids, and I have to turn away because my eyes leak. The eagles nest again in the big pine by the channel. The walleye fishing is the best it's been since I was a boy. And every sunrise, when the light hits the water just right, I walk the fence line that used to be a war zone and smell clean air instead of sewage and rage. Some fights are about property lines. This one was about whether a couple of regular people from downstate still get to matter when the whole system is greased for the Linda Harringtons of the world. We mattered. Now I want to hear from you, straight up. When somebody with money and connections decides your life is just something standing in the way of their view, when do you roll over and when do you fight? Is there ever a point where standing your ground crosses into something meaner? Or is that the lie the powerful tell, so the rest of us stay small? Drop your stories below. The crazier the better. Tell me where you draw the line between justice and vengeance, between protecting your family and becoming the monster you're fighting. I read every single comment. This is still America, last I checked. Speak loud.